So you're thinking about moving to Bend, Oregon, or maybe you're thinking about moving to Portland, Oregon, or maybe you're thinking about moving from Portland to Bend, Oregon. Well, in today's video, that's exactly what we're going to be covering. Today, we want to compare the lifestyle and cost of living of Portland as it relates to the lifestyle and cost of living in Bend, Oregon. So if this video sounds like it's for you, then stick around because we're going to be getting after it right now. Hey, if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living, eating, sleeping, working, playing, the good and the bad of living in Bend, Oregon, as it relates to maybe living in Portland, Oregon, then subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell below so you can be the first to know about the current market in Bend, Oregon. My name's Ryan and I've lived in Bend for over 30 years. My business partner, Zach, and I, we get calls and texts every day from people just like you looking for help on making their move to Bend or anywhere else in Central Oregon, and we absolutely love it. Whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or even set up a Zoom meeting. We'd be happy to help you make that smooth move to Bend or anywhere else in Central Oregon. So as we stated in the intro today, we're going to be comparing Bend with Portland, the state's biggest city. So a lot of people commute to Bend from Portland for vacation, for business on an annual basis, sometimes multiple times a year, and a lot of others come for vacation purposes. There's a lot of tourism that happens in Bend and the Central Oregon area. And a lot of them, the majority of them, typically come from other parts of the state. Yes, California gets a lot of the notoriety. Other parts of the country get some notoriety for people that come to visit Bend. But the vast majority of our tourists that come to Bend and Central Oregon are from the Willamette Valley, primarily Portland, as well as Salem, Eugene, etc. But Portland is the hub. It's the biggest city in the state. It gets the most credit for being what it is. And it kind of represents Oregon as a whole from a national landscape. Portland represents the state of Oregon. It is the brand, but we have other areas of the state as well that contribute. But again, Portland takes the cake when it's on a national scale. And the majority of the people live up there. A lot of them like to come down and visit Bend. Some of them end up wanting to move down here. So that's what we're doing today. We're comparing the cost of living as it relates to Portland and now as it compares to living in Bend. So if you're considering moving from Portland to Bend, take a look at this video. We want to show you a couple things, give you some perspective as to what to expect. Not that you don't already have that, but this gives you some more input as to how the state's largest city compares to the state's potentially most popular place to visit, the Central Oregon region. So let's get after it right now. We're going to share the screen on the computer and do some things to show you just exactly what we're talking about as we relate Bend and Portland together so you can make the best decision overall for you and in your family as you make that move to Bend and Central Oregon. So we're going to share screen here and we will be off to the races with today's video content. What we want to do is use this website called bestplaces.net. And it is a great tool that I like to use with clients that are coming from cities that I'm not so familiar with. Portland is a city, obviously it's in Oregon. It's the biggest one we have. And we used to visit that as a family growing up quite a bit because we had family up in the Portland area, but it's also the main hub of Oregon, right? Roberts Field is our airport. It's in Redmond. And the majority of our commercial flights historically have gone from Redmond to Portland, or sometimes Redmond to Seattle. Since then, as of this recording, Redmond does not have service to PDX, Portland's airport. We don't even have to go there anymore. But the point is that we used to do the majority of our flights up to Portland from Redmond's airport. There's two primary ways to get there from car. We have the Santa Ana Pass that goes up over the Cascades to the west through Salem and up into Portland through the I-5, or we go up Highway 20 up to Government Camp and over Mount Hood, and then we come in on the east side of Portland. Those are both about 150 miles away, and they both take about 3 to 3.5 hours to get there, depending on the weather. In the summertime, it's about 3 hours. In the wintertime, when the snow is on the roads up in the passes, it's a little bit slower paced, probably takes 3.5 hours. And if there's exceptions to that rule, sometimes there's really bad weather. Sometimes there's traffic jams. It's log jammed up there with traffic. Maybe there's an accident or something, but it slows down. The weather patterns can really slow things down. It can take up to 4 hours or maybe even a little bit longer. But typically speaking, the commute time via car from Bend to Portland is about 3 to 3.5 hours, 150 some odd miles, depending on which route you go. But that's pretty consistent either way. Portland, again, is the state's largest city. Bend is the fifth or sixth largest metropolitan area in the state. It's really growing at a rapid clip, though. It wouldn't surprise me that in another 10 to 15 years, Bend could eclipse the Eugenes and the Salems as maybe the third or the second largest metropolitan area in the state. But Portland is a distant first, and it will remain that way for some time into the future. But if we take a quick look here, what you're going to see here is Bend's population is sitting at 101,000 or almost 102,000, and Portland is sitting at 656,000. And that's just Portland proper. So Bend proper pretty much represents the Bend metropolitan area. If we expand those boundaries to Deschutes County, which we typically do, that includes Redmond, that includes Sisters, that includes Lapine, as well as Sun River. Those are the primary towns in Deschutes County. That would give us about 200,000 people in our metropolitan area. With Portland, we have dozens of suburbs and dozens of other towns in the area that comprise the Portland metropolitan area, which gives it a metropolitan population of about 2 million people. So in the grand scheme of things, Portland is much larger than Bend. Okay, and so if we're to compare some more of the statistics, the median income in Bend is $52,471, when the median income in Portland is $53,230. That's right on par with about the national average, as you can see here. If we continue to do some comparisons here, the cost of living is a big one. That's what a lot of people want to know about. Portland is a bustling city. It is the metropolitan city that represents the state, as well as it's the brand for what the country knows Oregon as. It rains a lot over in Portland. The climate is completely different on that side of the mountains. We have the Cascade Mountain Range that runs right down the middle of the state, a little bit to the west, but basically it runs right down from north to south, and it separates the Willamette Valley from the eastern side of the state. Bend is right in the middle of the state, and so the Cascade Mountains are about 20 miles to the west, and they go up to a base layer of about 6,000 feet, and the peaks rise up to over 10,000 feet. On the other side of those mountains is the Willamette Valley. It's a completely different landscape, completely different climate. They get a lot of rain. It's very green over there. That's where the majority of our population is. That's where Oregon gets its stigma as being a state that rains all the time. Probably true. If you live in the valley, that's where 75% of the state's population resides, up along that I-5 corridor, going from the very border of the Washington-Oregon border all the way down to the California border. And that's where the majority of our population resides, but it's also a very, very different style of climate. We're on the east side of the mountains in Bend. We have more of a desert-style climate, and we get much more sunshine, roughly 300 days of sunshine a year, whereas Portland on the other end is struggling to get to 100 days of sunshine a year. And so there's a huge difference in terms of its climate. And so if that's something of interest to you, you want more sunshine, then come on over to Bend, because there is really no comparison between the climate, the sunny days versus the rainy days from one side of the mountains to the other. It's pretty interesting in that regard. So now what we're going to do is a little comparison to cost of living. We've done this before. What we want to do is remind you guys how this works. The basic thing you need to understand is that the base level is 100. So for whatever category that we're talking about right now and comparing the cost of living of Bend with Portland, 100 is the national average. So that goes for food and groceries, that goes for healthcare costs, it goes for housing, it goes for median home cost, it goes for utilities, transportation, the like, etc. Okay, and so that's the base layer, that's the national average. And so what we're going to do now is just take a quick look at what Bend and Portland represent when it comes to cost of living and where it's at compared to the national average. So what we have here is Bend with a score of 131 and Portland with a score of 132. Those are both above the national average. Okay. Bend and Portland, they're both in Oregon. They're on the West Coast. It's a very sought after area to live in. They're going to be a little bit higher in terms of their cost of living compared to other places in the country. Now, they're not the most expensive, but they're not the most affordable either. We are on the West Coast. We're right in the middle of Washington and California. Obviously, California is the most populous state in the country, with 2 or 3 of the largest cities in the country that also represent and make up one of the biggest economies, not only in the country, but in the world, if you make California its own economy. So pretty remarkable. tech hubs in San Francisco and Seattle, two of the biggest technology hubs in the entire country, also the world. We are in a very unique location with where we're at in Oregon, whether it's Portland or it's Bend. But the point is that we are just a quick flight away to Seattle. We're a quick flight away from San Francisco. We're a quick flight away from Los Angeles. Again, one of the very unique areas in the entire country as to where we're located. Doesn't matter if you're in Portland or if you're in Bend when it comes to that regard. So that's why the overall score is going to be a little bit higher than the national average of 100. Okay, if we move on to the next category, food and groceries, about 102 to 103. The national average is 100. Okay, just a little bit more expensive than the national average. Really nothing to see here. It's right there. They're both kind of in the same ballpark, right? If we go down to housing, now we're getting somewhere. We have 217 for Bend. We have 184 for Portland. The median home cost in Bend, according to bestplaces.net, is 634. That's not entirely accurate. It's actually a little bit more. Okay, as of this month, we are in the month of March 2023, and we just got our latest housing data out for Central Oregon, and Bend's median home price is currently sitting at $660,000 per home. Okay, if we scale back 12 months or so, back to March of 2022, that was $773,000. So we've already come down over $100,000 from our peak median home price back in March of 2022. You can see the slope here. It kind of comes down as interest rates kind of went up. The demand for housing has obviously gone down. People have decided to go back onto the sidelines that were in the market for a time, and they're going to wait it out. They're going to wait for a better buying opportunity. So what's happening now, interest rates have gone up. They have brought the median home price down because the demand for homes has certainly gone down. There's people that are priced out of the market at the moment, and what they need to do is to simply wait for the best opportunity for the prices of homes to come back down into their buying range now that interest rates have gone up a little bit. But I digress here. So what we want to do is compare the current median home price of Bend versus the current median home price of Portland. And so what we have with Bend is $660,000, and the current price, according to bestplaces.net, is $536.90 in the Portland metropolitan area. Compare that to the national average of $291, and you see that the cost of living, or the cost of home affordability in the state of Oregon, is much higher than the national average, but Bend is certainly a significantly higher amount than it is compared to Portland. So people that are coming over to Bend, they're going to be expecting to pay a little bit more for the same house that they would have bought in the Portland area. It does depend. There's certain pockets of Portland that have a much higher median home price than, say, certain areas of Bend. But in general, the city of Portland is going to have a lower median home price than the city of Bend. Certain outskirts of Portland suburbs like Lake Oswego, Westland, Tualatin, etc., they might have a slightly higher median home price than, say, in Bend, but that's for another video. Right now we're talking about the city of Portland and the general landscape of the Portland metropolitan area as it compares to Bend. Utilities, okay, 83.6 to 79.9, pretty much in the same ballpark there. Transportation, 82.6 in Bend, lower than the national average of 100, versus Portland. Take a look at that, 130. Of course, Portland has 600,000 people, 2 million people in its metropolitan area. They have got public transportation that goes all over the metroplex. It's going to be a higher cost of getting from point A to point B. Portland is in a unique location in the sense that it's pretty far north. It's lower elevation, but they will get some snowstorms in the wintertime. And let me tell you, when they do get those snowstorms, it pretty much paralyzes the entire city. Just an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, a small amount of snow will literally stop everything. And you can see video clips on the news, people driving in the snow in Portland, and it definitely slows things down. So that will definitely rack up costs for transportation as well. But generally speaking, Portland has a much more robust public transportation system, as they should. It's a little bit more sprawled out. A lot of people live in the suburbs. They commute to and from the city and back and forth on a daily basis. Bend is much smaller, and we don't necessarily need to have that type of public transportation because people are close enough in living to where they work. And so they can either walk, they can ride their bike. Sometimes they caravan, sometimes they work from home. There's all kinds of things that will allow people in Bend to not necessarily have to commute all the time as much as you'd have to commute for certain things in the Portland area. And so that's the reasoning behind such a discrepancy in the transportation. But overall, it's the size of the towns. I mean, Bend's population is 100,000, and our metropolitan area, if you include Redmond and Deschutes County, is 200,000 people. Miscellaneous expenses, that's going to be entertainment, that's going to be restaurants, that's going to be going out, 135 and a half to 140. Certainly it's going to be a little bit higher than the national average. Our cost of living, our average median income in the state is much higher than the general national average. So you can expect certain things to cost a little bit more in that regard as well. So if we continue to move on, what we're going to do here is go through a couple more of these just to give you a better feel for living in Portland versus living in Bend. We've gone through the weather. We know that the weather is completely different. The climate is night and day different. As far as recreation goes, we're 20 miles away from Mount Bachelor. We've got the 6th largest ski resort in the country, just 20 miles away. Portland has Mount Hood, and there are multiple ski resorts in that area, but it's more of a 45-minute to an hour commute, depending on the traffic too, but it's comparable. Bend has the Cascade Lakes. We've got the Sunshine. We've got all kinds of golf courses in our area. Portland certainly has plenty of golf opportunities as well, but Bend probably has a better weather, more cooperative weather pattern and stream for the golf and the outdoors than say Portland does, especially in those shoulder seasons when the rain can come into Portland in the spring and the fall. Where in Bend it's sunny, but it can be kind of cool. So I mean, you kind of give and take. You get the cold in Bend, but sunshine, cold, dry sunshine. You get some of the wet and rain in Portland. It's still cold over there too in the shoulder seasons when it's raining. As we continue on, let's see, the politics of Portland versus Bend. This is an interesting one. We'll just touch on this very briefly, but you can see Portland and Oregon is typically a blue state. We tend to lean left. We vote left. It's been a long time since the state of Oregon has voted right as it relates to the president, and we typically will have a left-leaning governor, and that's to the credit of Portland and the people of the Valley. That's where the majority of people live, and you can see here the discrepancy right here. Bend 43% Democrat, and Portland 73.5% Democrat. Okay, you can see there's a huge disparity when it comes to political beliefs, and maybe that's why that mountain range is actually there to keep us separated from the others in terms of how we view things and view the world and how we feel about certain things as a whole on this side of the mountains versus the other side of the mountains on the west side. But pretty interesting there. Commuting, obviously we touched on that already, but the average commute time in Bend is 15 minutes, and this includes traveling to and from the airport. That's in Redmond, okay? So that's about 15 miles away. If you took away the need to go to Redmond, it would probably be about 10 to 12 minutes, if that, depending on the traffic in the morning. Portland, you're looking at about 26 minutes commute time. And so you can see that there is obviously going to be a little bit more of a commute anytime you're in a city with more people. But that generally is expected when it comes to living in a city. So that's basically it in terms of commuting. But overall, Portland is a great city. It's got a lot of personality. It's gone through some trials and tribulations. It's been in the news over the last couple of years, especially during that certain pandemic. There was certainly some spotlight on Portland for some negative things. I think it was completely blown out of proportion. Portland's a great city. I always enjoyed visiting it. And there's still so many spectacular things about Portland that Bend doesn't have. The two biggest rivers in the state coincide in Portland. That's usually the reason why people ended up settling in Portland. The Columbia and the Willamette rivers, just a bustling city. There's certain entertainment that Bend doesn't have that Portland certainly has. A much wider and more broad restaurant scene, bar scene, way more diversity, all kinds of things in that regard. If that's something that you're looking for, Bend is kind of on an island. It's a melting pot of transplants, people that have decided to leave wherever they were. Usually it's in other parts of the state. It's in Seattle, Washington. It's in California, certain parts of California. People congregate to the Bend area because they love the outdoor lifestyle and they want to figure out a way to make that lifestyle work with their job. And so that's really the motivation for people wanting to move to Bend. The challenge for people that want to move to Bend is, how can I live there while also make a living? That's always been the big thing and the big the big challenge. It's hospitality. That's what it was for the first 20 years of my life in Bend. Since then, there's been enough people that have moved, brought their ideas, brought their job, brought their careers and businesses here, where it's created more opportunities for other people to follow suit and either join those businesses or find some other line of work other than hospitality. Before hospitality, it was logging, it was ranching. That's really what Bend, that's how it started over there in Bend back in the early 1900s. So it's really grown up a lot. The growth is just absolutely out of this world in terms of how fast this area really is growing. In 1990, Bend had a population of 20,000 people. Today, it has a population of 100,000 people. So adding 80,000 people in about 30 years or 35 years is pretty remarkable. And I don't see any reason why that's going to slow down anytime soon. People that are commuting or moving here, they're coming from bigger cities. So for them, they're moving to a small, tiny town. And so the infrastructure, we're trying to keep up with it. The city of Bend's trying to keep up with the demands for housing. There literally is usually 1 to 2 months of inventory on the market because there's still so much demand to live here. Even though the market is kind of dissipated and slowed down a little bit, it's really hard to keep up with the infrastructure, the demand. We get 4 million people that come through Central Oregon on an annual basis, whether it be for business or for vacationing purposes. And so imagine that exposure coming into Bend on a regular basis in a town of 100,000 people or a metropolitan area of 200,000 people and just getting exposed. And how many of those people are considering moving every single year? And so that's really what's happening with this Bend area and why the Central Oregon area is growing up at such a rapid pace. It is such a desirable place to live. Portland's a great place to live. But Bend is also a great place to live. And I think just based off the numbers and how fast the areas are growing, I think Bend is taking the lead in that regard. And it won't be long before Bend is one of the largest 2 or 3 cities in the state of Oregon. So that's kind of the trend line that we're on right now. But overall, the cost of living is very comparable to Portland. We saw the general ranking was 131 to 132. So in general, the cost of living between Bend and Portland is very, very equal and very similar. It's just a matter of what you prefer. You like the bigger city, you like the diversity, you like the certain culture that Portland has to offer, the keep Portland weird vibe. I mean, that's there, and that's absolutely fantastic. Or there's Bend, and it's up and coming, just trying to accommodate all the demand, all the new people that are moving here, and they love the outdoor lifestyle. A little bit slower pace and a little bit more laid back, although there's moments where it feels like kind of a bustling city too, because we are what we are in terms of population. But when we have so many more people here visiting, it can feel like a big city at times, especially with wait times at restaurants or waiting in traffic. I know that certain cities don't want to hear about us whining about traffic, but when you have certain infrastructure in place with X amount of people in the town at one time, it can certainly feel like a big city. But that's basically how it works. We've got our biggest city in Portland. We've got our up and coming city in Bend in Central Oregon. Those are the 2 primary cities right now. Salem and Eugene, they're also bigger population cities in the state, but Bend certainly gets a lot of the national notoriety as one of those places that constantly shows up on a top 25 list for, living outdoors, retiring, all kinds of things. Top beer city in the country. I haven't mentioned that yet, but Portland and Bend are both basically 1 and 2 when it comes to beer city USA type rankings and type of debates. Bend actually is number 1 per capita in the country, and Portland also has the most breweries in the state. So craft brew, if that's what you like, if you're a foodie, you can pick either or. Portland certainly has a little bit more of a selection than Bend, but Bend is nipping on the heels, and they're a little ways away, but they certainly have a great selection for the size of the city. So all kinds of things, great entertainment scenes on both sides. It's just a matter of what your preference is. a lot of people prefer the weather and the slower pace of life that Bend has to offer. So hopefully this helps you today. We're super excited. If you're moving from Portland or you're considering moving from Portland down to Bend, we'd love to help you learn more about the area. If you need to do that, if you need to learn more about what the neighborhoods are, what maybe the scape of Central Oregon itself is, help you find the best spot in Central Oregon. It doesn't have to be Bend necessarily. It can be Redmond, it can be Sisters, it can be Tumalo, it can be Lapine, it can be Prineville, it can be Sun River. There's all kinds of flavors and personalities of Central Oregon. And that's our goal here with this channel, is to help you make the best decision that's right for you, so you can find out where it is you need to live to help you hit the ground running upon your arrival. So again, my name's Ryan. I'm with eXp Realty. I appreciate you guys watching. Zach and I love what we do. We want to help you find a good spot here, the best fit for you. Our contact information is in the comment section below. You can call us, you can text us, you can email us, you can even set up a Zoom meeting. We would love to do that. And please give us a comment in the comment section, whether you like the video, maybe you don't like the video. What can we do better? What should we do in the future as far as covering content? We want to help be the best possible resource for you as you do your due diligence during the process of learning about the area that you potentially may move to at some point down the road. So again, thanks for watching. If I don't see you on or around town, I guess I will just plan on seeing you on the next video. Thanks for watching and have a great day.